Hey YouTubers, Donovan here to give you my review on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This review is going to consist mostly of, my opinions of the movie and generally how I really feel about the movie overall. So without further ado, let's get to it. So, this was Walt Disney's first animated movie. And not only was it Walt Disney's first animated movie, but it was the first animated movie ever. Like, that's insane. In 1937, people did not think that this movie was going to work. Nobody in 1937 thought that a long cartoon was going to be successful. Even Walt Disney's wife and brother told him that this movie wasn't going to work. But lo and behold, he proved them wrong, he persevered, and he got Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs out to the public. This is how I was really first introduced to the tale of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, was because of this movie. And it was this movie that made me interested in animation as a whole, because just the way it looks, the cell animation, it just looks breathtaking. Like, from every little detail, the glitter on the diamonds when the dwarves mine them, and the animation of when the queen turns into the old hag. Those are some of the best parts of the movie with that kind of animation. And it really sucks that we don't do hand-drawn animation anymore in, this day of animation or entertainment in general, because looking at hand-drawn animation, it really was in a world of its own when it first came into being, especially with this movie. But essentially, what Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is about is, if you haven't, heard the fairy tale of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, there's this evil queen who wants to be the fairest in the land. And the only way she can really be the fairest in the land is if she gets rid of Snow White, who's the true fairest in the land, because she continuously asks this magic mirror in her castle, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And he always exclaims that it's Snow White. So, and by the way, I think Snow White is the evil queen's stepdaughter or daughter, or I don't know. If any of you know, let me know in the comments. But essentially what happens is she sends the huntsman to go and get Snow White's heart and put it in a box for her. And essentially, really what she wants the huntsman to do is kill her. But he takes her into the woods, she's picking flowers, and he can't bring himself to kill her because he finds her so beautiful. So he basically warns Snow White that, hey, your stepmother, or mother, like I said, don't really remember, is trying to kill you. You need to flee. And she does. She flees inside the forest, and this was probably the most scariest scene in the movie for me, because when I saw the scene, I was like, what in the world is going on? Because the trees start to come to life. And if any of you have seen the movie, that scene is just terrifying in general for any little kid to watch. But moving on, she gets so scared that she, just sits down, cries, and basically says, what am I going to do? Am I going to get out this forest? And then the wooded creatures, feeling sorry for her, help her get to this cottage. Now, Snow White doesn't know who the cottage belongs to, but it turns out it belongs to the Seven Dwarfs. And when she gets into the cottage, she figures out that it's kind of, dirty in there. It's kind of a dump. So what she and the other woodland creatures decide to do is clean up the house and basically explain to the owners who she is when they get there. And meanwhile, while that's happening, the dwarves are mining in, the mines, singing their good song, hi ho, it's off to work we go. I'm sorry, I just love that song. But, as they're doing that, as work has ended for them, the day is done, they go to their cottage, and then they find Snow White. And it's cool because each of the dwarves have their own personalities based off their names. There's Doc, there's Happy, there's Grumpy, there's Bashful, there's Dopey, there's Sleepy, so on and so forth. I'm sorry, I can't really remember all the names, but that's the majority of the dwarves. But anyways, Grumpy, he's grumpy, so of course he's very distrustful of Snow White at first, but as the movie goes on, he grows to accept her and like her. So, but when they get inside the house, they realize that Snow White's there, it's like she's an intruder, and then all the other dwarfs are like, no, she doesn't look like an intruder. But, they all introduce themselves, and Basically, over time in the movie, the dwarves take care of Snow White, and Snow White does the same, cooking for them, cleaning for them, and as the dwarves get ready to go off to work. And while they're all having their happy time, the evil queen, she gets the box back from the huntsman. She finds a heart in it, but she realizes that that heart does not belong to Snow White like she wanted. So, she plans to kill Snow White herself. And she goes into a lower part of her castle where she transforms herself into an old hag, another terrifying part of the movie. And she basically puts a sleeping curse on one of the apples that she plans to give to Snow White. And while the dwarves are all working, she goes to the cottage, which I don't even know how she found the cottage, but it's been a while since I've seen the movie. But she lets herself into the cottage where Snow White is, but Snow White doesn't know that the hag is actually the evil queen in disguise. So she feeds Snow White one of the apples, and she falls asleep, basically dead. And the woodland creatures go and find the dwarves, telling them what has happened to Snow White, basically bring her to the cottage, and they find Snow White on the floor with the old hag, sitting there. And so the dwarves go after the old hag, where they chase her up a cliff, like up a mountain area or whatever, and she tries to squash them with a giant boulder. However, it does not work in her favor, because what ends up happening is lightning strikes, and it hits the part of the cliff where the old hag or evil queen is standing on, and basically she ends up tumbling down with the boulder going down with her. So she's dead. But the dwarves end up going back to the cottage, and they're just sad, and it's probably the saddest part of the movie, especially when you see Grumpy, because, he's supposed to be the tough guy of the group. So seeing him sad is really heartbreaking. So what they decide to do is, to protect her by putting her in this glass coffin for, I think, a year. And the woodland creatures are all just sitting around the coffin, waiting. And then here comes the prince, he's just prancing around through the woods. And he sees Snow White, and he recognizes that that's the girl he saw in the castle, like in the beginning of the movie. And he is upset as well as the dwarf. So what he does is, he bends over and kisses her. And true love's kiss breaks that curse. And, she's alive, everybody's happy. The Prince and Snow White go to the castle, and they all live happily ever after. The end. Now, my favorite part of this movie was the fact that for something that looks like it could be a kid's movie, it has a lot of scary scenes. Like I talked about the woods, which of course everybody knows is probably one of the most scary parts of the movie, and the queen turning into the old hag. But for me, the scariest part of the movie, for some reason, I don't know why, but I always found this scary, was the magic mirror. Simply because of the fact that when he first shows up, the song pretty much sets the mood for that scene. It's dark, it's ambient. Then you see him appear through the mirror. He's got no eyes, and he's just floating. He doesn't even have a body, and he's just like, what would thou... Oh, damn. I'm trying to say it. It's hard what he says. What would thou know, my queen? And he's just got this, like, deep, dark, booming voice. I don't know. The mirror always looked creepy to me as a kid, so that's why I always found that scene scary. My favorite parts of the movie would probably be when the dwarves are mining for the diamonds, simply because I like the way that the diamonds look with that type of animation, and they just glitter, and it just looks beautiful with the cell animation. So that was a plus for me. My favorite character would honestly have to be the dwarfs. I can't pick really a main one because I like them all. So, I really like how all of them have their personalities based off their names. Grumpy is grumpy, happy is happy, dopey is dopey. Dopey's probably the funniest out of all the dwarfs for me, so there's that. I can't really say much about Snow White because, I don't know, Snow White just never really interested me as a character. I just thought, okay, she's your typical princess, She cleans, she sings, yada yada yada. It was Disney's first movie, so I'll give her credit where credit is due. She really did establish, what a princess was, at that time. And overall, I just love this movie. It's a timeless classic. It's Disney's first movie. It's animation history and it's movie history. What else can you say about it? Because of this movie, we have Disney. Because of this movie, we have animated movies in general. And you cannot overlook a fact like that. So, honestly, that's all I have to say about this movie. But, it was good revisiting this movie again, and it was good talking about it. And I hope to do this with more animated movies, more Disney movies in general. And that's all I have to say. Peace.